everyone, welcome to Connecting the Dots. Connecting the Dots is a weekly Facebook Live talk show by aphasiasg that aims to answer all your burning questions about our healthcare system and health services such as speech therapy, music therapy, social work, as well as any questions you might have about brain injury. I'm Siu Wei. I'm a speech therapist volunteer from aphasiasg and your moderator tonight. Each week, our show will feature different healthcare professionals, patients, or caregivers who will share their insights and experience. For our sixth episode today, the topic is Caregivers' Journey. Now, to all viewers on Facebook, we encourage you to ask questions and leave comments freely throughout the session. Our guests will aim to address all your concerns before the end of the show. Without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce three caregivers today. When we say caregiver, the first thought that comes to mind is probably a spouse. But today, we are privileged to have three different caregivers who hold a different role in a family. We have Hazirah, a daughter and caregiver for her father who had stroke 10 years ago. Next, we have Douglas, who is retired and now a caregiver for his younger brother. We also have Catherine, a mother caring for his son who had a stroke in 2018. Thank you very much, everyone, for agreeing to join us today. So, how is everyone doing? Good. Yeah. Okay, remember to unmute yourself because we'll be sharing a little bit about your caregiver journey. So thank you very much for spending time with us today. And so I would like the audience to know a little bit about how is your caregiver journey like, because you are a daughter, a brother, and a mother. So it will be rather different. So how is it like for you guys? When did the journey started? Catherine, would you like to share with us first?
My son, actually, I'm caregiver to my son Damien. On the evening of 2018, June 18, I received a call from the office that they have sort of sent my son to the emergency department in SGH because he was unwell. When I got there, he was able to speak a little, but eventually after that, he was in intensive care for I can't really remember how many days, but maybe a week or so. And I know I spent my time more or less the first week or so with him in the intensive care. So he suffered a brain aneurysm, and which resulted in a stroke lah. I'm still, it's a harrowing experience for me, a journey, journey for me. But I'm glad to say that I'm learning to, after the first year, I sort of, after being resigned to it, I accepted the situation, and I'm better now. I'm able to cope better now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Catherine, for sharing. Yeah, and this is a picture of you and Damien. Yeah, and yeah, so, and this is, yeah, how you mentioned about going through rehab together.
Yes, I sent him to the Taiwan Ang Mo Kio Community Hospital Day Rehab Center for his therapies, his physiotherapy, as well as his occupational therapy. I'm also sending him to another, they call it myotherapy, at the New Life Center in Tampines, and once a week. So, and besides that, he's going for his speech therapy as well at SGH.
Yeah, and you're together with him all the way through.
Yeah, I normally have to accompany him, to give him support lah, even though in the day rehab, because of the COVID, 19, we are not allowed in, and for 1.5 hours we are just outside, we are not allowed in at all.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. It's definitely not an easy journey. And yeah, what about Hazirah? How is it like for you?
Yeah, hi, I'm Hazirah, and I'm a caregiver to my father for the past 10 years and counting. So my father had his first stroke in 2010, and I was overseas. So after flying I was on exchange in Mexico. So after flying across about 3 continents and 33 hours later, I saw my dad in the ICU. And ever since that day, my world totally changed upside down.
Mm,
Yeah, so this is a photo of myself and my father when I was a few months old, apparently, in our old home.
mm,
So in that short moment when I in that short like flight, right? I changed from his daughter to his co-caregiver with my mom. So the past 10 years have been very difficult. I think the word is difficult, but I've also learned a lot of things.
mm,
And last year, my father had a second stroke, and he picked himself up again from that second stroke. But unfortunately, very recently, around last month, he has been diagnosed with a heart condition. So for me, my caregiving journey has been like hills and valleys. But the longer it is, right, the better the equipment you have to
mm.
actually traverse the hills and valleys. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah. It actually a caregiver's journey never really ends, right? Yeah, it
Yes.
really started. Yeah. So Nat, what about Douglas? You as a brother, elder brother, now caregiver for your younger brother. Yeah, how has it been and when did it started?
It started about three and a half, almost 3.5 to 4 years ago, when I received a phone call after midnight from Tan Tock Seng saying that no, Matthew would need a surgery, no, a brain surgery. So I had to make that decision over the phone, which I say yes if it's necessary to save him.
Mm,
And from there onward, the journey started. It, I have the support of all my brothers and sisters. I think that is something which I am very thankful for, because they all step up and play their part as joint caregivers. Although I
mm,
think, because I'm a retiree, so I have a little bit more time. But my brother, his wife, my wife, my sisters and sisters-in-law, they all come together to provide the support, because Matthew is single and staying alone.
mm.
So it's a very different kind of situation compared to the normal patient where you have your family, within the same household.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely very different. And you being elder brother, taking care of a younger brother again, and before that you may not know like you will know may not know much about his life, and yet now you're very involved in his life as well.
Yeah, as
Yeah.
I say, we all
Mm,
step up, not just in the
yeah.
daily activities. The daily activities include like uh, food provision,
Mm,
his daily necessities, but in terms of learning about impact of stroke, it started actually the very first day in acute care. In my
mm,
opinion, it's you got to stay connected with the medical team, with the therapists, PT, OT, and speech therapy. And then when you know that speech impairment is severe in the case of Matthew, you really got to connect with all these therapists, because you learn a lot. Because when they conduct therapy sessions with with the patient, you can
mm,
learn a lot of techniques. No,
yeah.
so from acute care to to step-down care in Tan Tock Seng,
Community care.
in Ang Mo Kio, and home care, and then continuation of that into day care rehab, the day rehab, and it's a continuation from individual to group.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's a journey that never ends.
Yeah, and this is a very nice picture that you share with us, because you're saying that your journey never ends and you continuously seek for different ways that you can help Matthew to participate again in the society. And so this is a picture of both of you attending Chit Chat online, run by aphasiasg. Yeah, so I remember you wrote into us and enroll him into our program as well. So really, a caregiver journey is actually more than just giving food and a house to stay, but it also leads to a lot more journey, therapy journey, participation in the society. Yeah. So as caregiver, sometimes when anyone is sick, it actually doesn't just affect the patient alone. It does also affect the family members as well, right? So what are some of the challenges that you face? Three of you face. Yeah.
Maybe I can start first.
Sure.
And use the slide on trying to get my father to go through speech therapy.
Okay.
Should we pull up the slide?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So for me, 10 years has been really long. It's like more than 10 years now, right? It's like the anniversary is June. My mom and I always remember June. And in these 10 years, right, I've tried many things to try and meet my father where he's at. So one of the things that we really push for over the decade, right, is to get my father off a feeding tube, which you will see later in my family photo. My father was on a feeding tube for 10 years and trying to get him off the feeding tube. So what happened was that maybe should we just show the photo of my father?
Yeah, I'm just about to go to that.
No worries. Yeah, so throughout these 10 years, right, my father has shown indications sometimes that he wants to eat, but because my father's injury is very severe, he's fully paralyzed on the right side. He can't walk, he can't talk, and it seems that he can't understand what we're saying. But that's according to the doctors. My father himself, I'm telling you, sometimes there's still understanding that you yourself don't understand how much he can understand. So yes, my father was on a feeding tube, as you can see here, for 10 years. But when he had his second stroke last year, okay, so throughout these 10 years, we've been trying to get him to eat again. But everyone I've met, like all the doctors and all the therapists, told me that because his cognition is severely impacted and then his understanding is limited, it's very risky to get him to eat again because he might choke and then he can't tell us. But somehow over 10 years, I never stopped trying despite being told no. So at like the 3-year mark, I tried, the 5-year mark, I tried. And finally last year, maybe we can go back to the photo in the AAC. Yeah. So last year, never mind, slowly. So last year, somehow everything, the confluence of factors came together. My father was ready for it, so he has his own timeline. So he decided that a decade is the time when I can want to eat again. So my father was ready. He met with speech therapists from NUH, who were very supportive and told me, let's try. And then he also had, like, the circumstances were just right for him to start eating again, and he ate. So
his feeding tube is off, right?
Yes, he's without a feeding tube now. Yeah. So a lot of people tell me it can't be done or it's very rare, but somehow it happened.
Yeah.
So along with the swallowing, the improvement in swallowing, right, I also tried to get him to speak. So you can see here, basically it's a card that his speech therapist prepared for him with the basic functions. And then so the speech therapist told us to use an app. And then the app, you can see, maybe the next slide.
This is the one, right?
Yeah. So I load. Okay, basically,
let me just play that again so that everyone can hear that again, because this is like upgraded from the cards, right? Picture cards, right? So then you use an app to communicate.
I want to go home.
So this was when we were at Jurong Community Hospital after his second stroke. And I know he was very angry with me because he wanted to go home. But I didn't want to let him to go home because I wanted him to learn how to use the device. But so I loaded so you can see that I want to go home, right? It's because he's very angry with me. So I said, like, do you want to go home? Trying to get him to use the device. And I loaded it with pictures of our old home. That's actually our old home, the block. And then also like photos of his family and friends. But my father decided that, I don't want to learn how to use this thing. And I was very upset. But when I spoke to the speech therapist, she told me, does your father have functional communication? That means that is he able to communicate with you and your family members about what he wants? And the answer is yes. So she told me that there's no point in trying to push him to use something that he's not comfortable with. So throughout this process, right, I learned two things. One, don't give up. But number two, also when to scale back and not try and impose my own like desire onto what my father can or cannot do.
So that are some of your challenges. And also you wanted to share this with the audience, our audience tonight, this picture.
Oh yes. So I think one of the challenges about being a daughter caregiver, right, who is young. So my father had his stroke when he was very young, 49, and it's a severe stroke, right? And I was only, at that time I was 22 only. So now everybody knows my age. But, but anyway, being a young caregiver, right, is really challenging because I was still schooling at that time, right? And there was a lot of pressure around, oh my gosh, I didn't expect to be a caregiver so young. And then in this photo, right, is my parents brought me to the zoo. And I was imagining like my father and my mom actually telling me what are the names of the animals. Like in our background, antelope, elephant. So, and he's carrying me, right? But now we are reversed. So it's me now trying to understand from my father what is he trying to say and becoming his, as I was saying to some people yesterday, translator. So I'm basically, because he can't speak, he has aphasia, like global aphasia, he totally can't speak, but he can communicate via gesticulation. He can tell us when he's angry. So communication is not only verbal. Communication happens through body language. Communication happens through understanding who the person is. So in a way, I'm kind of like returning the favor. When I was younger, my father used to tell me what are these things. So now it's my job to get him to understand what are the things around him, especially with his complex health needs.
Yeah, Hazirah, you're really, really right and really spot on, is that communication is actually more than just words. It's the non-verbal communication, even facial expression and gestures count. Yeah, so what about Catherine? How was your journey? What are some of your challenges as a mother caring for your son?
Well, during the period when he was in the intensive care and eventually into the general ward, I was there all the time, from morning to night. And even after his discharge, 2 months later from, during that period when I was there, you sort of neglected yourself. You're not interested in you neglected yourself, you hardly ate, you got no appetite. So, it's just one of those one of the phases that you have to go through, where you feel that you're all alone and single but when after his discharge from hospital, he had to go to the Bright Vision Hospital for rehabilitation for another 2 months. So he was discharged at when he was in October 2018. So upon coming back, he's sometimes he has meltdowns. I mention that when there are times when he will say, I want to die, I want to commit suicide, just to relieve all of you from the burden of caring for me.
Right.
That upsets me, but after a while, he will sort of cool down, and I will, at the moment when he said that, I was very upset. But after that, we forget, we sort of, forget about the whole thing, and we started, everything went back to normal. A caregiver must be prepared to accept meltdowns sometimes, as well as outbursts. Sometimes if he feels not in the mood, he will just sort of, vent out his frustrations. So that is
Right.
one thing that we have to be aware of. But as long as he,
Definitely.
after that, he's all right, that
Mm.
matters. Everything is forgotten, and it's sort of, when it's a new day and a new beginning again. So for that, I'm grateful. I'm also given the grace. I pray when I'm really up to, when I'm really troubled and all that, I say my prayers, and that helps. Like, with the grace of God, I managed to sort of, go through it lah.
Right.
I noticed, after
Mm.
after a year, you begin to sort of, be resigned to the situation you're in, and you begin to accept. That was after a year, only after a year. And I think it's important that caregivers must sort of stay connected with friends, because they tried to get me, but I was not prepared to go out, during that period of 1 year. But after that, I felt that I have to have a break myself. So I sort of accepted the invitation to go for lunch sometimes, just to spend a bit of time away from caregiving,
Mm.
being a caregiver. And, I'm able to sort of immerse myself with, during that little time I have with them. So just have a break, and it's really relaxing, that you should, caregivers should always take a break, even though, in the duties, sort of overwhelmed you still need the break, I feel.
Yeah, definitely, Catherine. I think because you have been caregiving so much, you also need to care for yourself, right? Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that very, very important point. It's okay to take care of yourself and ourselves as caregivers. Yeah. What about Douglas? How is it like for you? What are the challenges you face taking care of your younger brother?
Well, when from day one of the journey, very quickly we agreed on, for example, different roles. Each of us play different roles, and we share that responsibility and duties. So in a way, in the initial part of the journey, of course, the patient always will have more frustration. It's a shock, completely losing your ability, physical ability, now ability to do things on your own, to speak, to even, so there are quite a few things. But I think being a group, which I just shared earlier on, I have even my brothers-in-law who play that role.
Yeah.
We have about nine people as resources that we can tap on for basic stuff, right? For those that are medical in nature, treatment, there are a few of us, the immediate brothers and sisters, plus our wives, to come together and make that decision. So I thank God that we stayed united in that sense until today. The focus is basically on his well-being, the quality of life, which in all decisions, that is the key. And the motivation is to see him recover. And over time, we realized that we got to have realistic expectation. I myself start off with being a bit impatient. We wanted to do everything, but it takes time. Some things take time. Some things are it depends on the patient. But on Matthew's case, his was really speech. His physical, in fact, after 5 months, he was able to walk already. Then, of course, the other thing, like the small muscles, as you know, the OT thing, where dressing yourself, all those require some time, because that recovery is very slow.
Right.
So these are how we have gone through the journey. If we talk about challenges that we face until today, it has improved, but the inability to communicate with him No, although it's the biggest challenge. Although you can use body language, gesture, drawing, writing, all the techniques that you learn from the speech therapies. Really getting him motivated to do all this as well, because it is a partnership, right? Because
Yes,
if you do, he doesn't, then it's a one-way street.
definitely.
But we found that it improves over time now. And yeah, his dependence on us, as I mentioned earlier, we share this. So for example, if A cannot drive, B will drive. Transportation needs, for example.
It's good to have like a group of
We are able to schedule. In the first year, we are scheduled for everything.
Yeah.
Day one, day two, from hospital all the way to home.
Right.
Like that, where in the rehab, who should fetch, who should go. Generally, 2 of us or 3 of us will have been oversee over the entire program.
Right.
In terms of setting goals, reviewing that.
So teamwork together as a family, and to really try to make the right decision for Matthew, and learning again how to communicate with him is definitely some of the challenges you face. And I'm sure Catherine and Hazirah also did mention something like that. So we have a few questions from our Facebook audience. So one of it is, how did you come to terms to being a caregiver? Did you feel anger and resentment? I think Catherine did share a little bit about her, how she took 1 year to go through all this and to accept what has happened. What about Hazirah and Douglas?
Yeah, so do I feel anger and resentment? Yeah, all the time. Like I was saying, some of them, I hate all those, like, sometimes on TV you see all those like lovely montage in like very soft filter like commercials about caregiving. What a meaningful journey. Yeah, it's meaningful, but it's very, very frustrating. Like, oh my God, I lose my temper with my father, right? Like, at least on a weekly basis. So I think somebody asked, like, how do you deal with that, right? I think caregivers need to have the courage to forgive ourselves and know that tomorrow is a new day. That means that you have tried your best. And if your best, right, is the best for today, then you tell yourself, that's enough. I have done enough. So this is a lesson that I took very long to learn, because there's always more things you can do. There's always more therapy sessions you can schedule. There's always more medications you can try, right? But you need to be able to tell yourself, I have a limit, and if I cannot hit the goals for my loved one, it's okay. I forgive myself and I try again tomorrow. Yeah.
Right, that's really good advice. Try again tomorrow and learn to forgive yourself, right? So this is how you self-care. Although definitely there'll be anger, since you were a caregiver at a very young age.
Yeah, and I love traveling, right? I really love traveling. In fact, when my father fell ill, I was in Mexico. I was on summer school. So I spent a year abroad. And the last time I saw my father was a year ago, when I came back for a short while to get my visa. So how do you, and I think this is connected to another question somebody asked, right? Like, how do you actually like do things that, or like get into or do the things you used to love without feeling guilt? I don't think the guilt will ever go away. When I'm on holiday, right, I went to Trans-Siberian last year, and I really love the trip, but on the train I feel like, I could be doing more. However, after 10 years, right, I gave up trying to be not guilty. You're always going to be guilty, but you enjoy yourself anyway, because you see it as like charging your own battery.
Yeah.
Right? If your battery is low, you cannot come back and give your best for your loved one. So I go off, charge my battery. Then when I come back, bam, I give it all I've got, and I have no regrets, or at least minimal.
Yeah, learn to take care of yourself. Yeah, that's what I learned from your sharing. What about Douglas? What about you? Do you feel any anger and resentment? And what are some of the ways you do to take care of yourself as well as a caregiver? Yeah.
Well, as I shared earlier, we have 9 people. So if I need to take a holiday, someone else would replace my role. similarly the same if the others want to go. So we always have a schedule, important dates like when the helper is off, now on weekends, on certain occasions. So I would say disappointment sometimes with the progress, but I think over time you become more realistic that you only can push so far, but our mindset is very clear. Prime mindset is to give him the best possible. So it's really not an easy thing, and that's the reason why now we move on to different organization. For example, for physio, right? You move on from where you were in home therapy and then daycare, one-to-one, day rehab. You move on to organization which are more specialized. We have different equipments, and so there are all these things. But at the right time, when the patient is ready, you should give that opportunity. Okay. So I mean this is and that's why I'm here too. Aphasia. I realize this is very beneficial for his speech therapy. But there are other things that are ongoing all the time, as you know. 4 years ago, technology was different. Now, there are so many many devices and that can assist.
Yeah, talking about how you want to bring, taking into different organization, getting in touch with different organization. I just thought of this video that is really nice to share with our audience here today. That's where you actually enroll Matthew. Yeah, although the name here is Douglas, we actually Matthew doing singing choir. So where he attempts to practice. Yeah, so this is him doing vocal warm-up. Yeah. So
here I want to thank Evelyn because I heard about Chit Chat Cafe, which is part of this official program, right? So, and she really encouraged me about now to enroll Matthew for the choir. And since Matthew loves music, and music can be it's good for therapy to recall the past, so it helps in his neuroplasticity as well, I think. So yeah, these are the it's a journey that you got to, as caregivers, you got to continuously educate yourself, go for training, like what I think Evelyn conducted a workshop. And all these are very useful knowledge and tools, but at the end of the day, you got to put them into practice.
Yeah, so that's right. And we actually have another question from Jimmy. I am a caregiver to my father, and I can relate to your experiences. How do you all deal with low points in your life? Yeah, Catherine, how you mentioned about tantrums and you were very upset when words are sometimes said. I'm sure Douglas and Hazirah would experience the same. So, Catherine, why don't you share with us, like, how do you deal with low points?
Sometimes when he has this outburst and all that, it affected me when he said he wants to die, he wants to, and all that, just to relieve us of the burden of caring for him. But I said, we don't mind caring for you as long as you make the effort to try to help yourself. Help yourself by, he's a bit laid back. So other than the therapies at the day rehab center, he doesn't do much, at home. So sometimes I urge him to sort of, do your best and try to walk, but you can't push them. They have to be ready for it. And there's no point telling him, and sometimes he will say okay, and he really kept to his promise. He will walk a few, from the living room to the kitchen and back to and fro 3 rounds. But it's all, as I said, it is, you have to be patient, and at the moment you may feel very upset and sometimes even angry, but if you tell yourself that he's also going through a lot, so you sort of um, not get angry anymore, try to get away from the, maybe walk out of the room, or do something, and then he will forget. After a while he will be back to his normal self, and I will feel better. So that's how we sort of tackle the problem when he has outbursts and all that. So I said you should not, as I sort of tell him that at least you have people to sort of caregivers to look after you. What about, sometimes those who have nobody, to care for them. So you always must consider yourself blessed, that at least there's somebody to attend to you, and you should not have outbursts like that lah. And we don't mind. I mean, I told him, I said, as long as, no matter how long you take to recover, we will still be here, provided I'm still around. So I always, also, that is one point that I will tell him, I'm advanced in age, so you need to try and be independent to be able to walk. He's not very, he lost his coordination also, so it's quite hard for him to really walk without support and without the walking frame. So I said, so you must always remember that I'm advanced in age, and the time will come, God willing, that I can stay with you until you recover, and be independent. But what happens, so you have to help yourself, and at least when I go, I'll go with a peace of mind. That's what I told him lah, so I don't know whether, hopefully that he will sort of be improved lah. I'm hoping for that to happen. So just to tell him.
Yeah, this is a lovely picture of both of you celebrating your birthday that was just past yesterday. Yeah, happy belated
that was a
once
week
again.
ago, but my birthday yesterday. That was a week ago. My daughter brought me for a dinner.
It was a lovely picture here. So Hazirah, I think you also answer one of our Facebook audience question. How do you manage their meltdowns and outbursts? And you mentioned that you give yourself a break and give him a break, right? And go to different places and areas. So what about Douglas and Hazirah? How do you manage low points in your life? And if your loved ones actually have meltdowns and so on, how do you manage it?
Yeah, for me, it's ironic, right? Because actually I turn to work. So actually I do research with caregivers. And it's when I learn to, so what I do is I redirect my energy or my frustration, right, towards, I see it as skill building towards developing empathy for my research informants. So for example, when I write about caregivers face a lot of stress and conflict, I'm not just writing I'm writing from that, that just happened yesterday. So during the point of time when we were trying to switch my father out of feeding tube, right, I was actually writing a paper about careful hand feeding. So I was reading all the literature about how to advocate for my father in terms of how to talk to doctors. So what I mean by redirection, right, is that the skills that I've learned, I see it as being useful for something else. So when my grandmother fell ill, in Singapore, we have a very paternalistic medical culture. We look up to doctors. It's not common to question doctors, right? It would seem like, oh my God, how can you question the doctor? The doctor knows everything. But I take the skill that I've learned from taking care of my dad and apply it towards taking care of my grandmother. So in a way, right, it helps me to look at the caregiving experience positively, in the sense that it's horrible, it's tiring, it's upsetting, and it makes you go run through the whole gamut of emotions, but there's a greater purpose out there, right?
Yes. So there's a Facebook question for you. What was it like balancing work and caregiving? Was your workplace accommodating to you taking time off? Because you do turn to work, right?
Yeah, my old workplace wasn't. Ironically, civil service. My new workplace, by virtue of the fact that we do research with patients, is more accommodating. So is it easy? It's not. I'm not gonna, I mean, I have no interest in lying and saying, oh no, it's okay, be strong, stay strong, you can do it. I think those messages are good, but they also tend to also cover or like gloss over the pain. So is it easy balancing? No. So all I can see is when I'm angry, right, I channel the angst into like manuscript writing, for example. Like, yeah,
Right.
the
Turn
health
to work.
system is not supportive. It's very fragmented. If you have one condition, and my father has a lot of conditions, right? You have one condition, you have to
Mm,
see this doctor, then you have to run across the other side of the hospital and see another doctor. So I channel it into work.
right. Yeah.
I don't know whether this is healthy, but works for
Okay. I
me.
mean, everyone would have different ways to manage their stress and also the, meltdowns that's happening. Yeah. So I think there's another question from Jean. What was it like making important or sensitive decision on behalf of your loved one with aphasia? What should people take note of? I think, Douglas, you did mention a lot about, you need to make decisions for your younger brother, and you need to discuss with families as well. So how was it like for you?
Um, I think most important is to give them the, as much information, background that's necessary for them to form their own view, and then we come together and always go back to the same, what is our key objectives of Matthew, right? Which is quality of life, which is for his recovery. So once we focus on that, initially, there may be different comments coming from, but ultimately we usually and almost always so far have reached a common consensus. So that in this case, yeah, because it's less emotional, right, compared to a parent making for a child, or a child making for the parent or spouse, right? We are quite, I would say, objectively, but in love, with love. Yeah, so when Matthew has his downs, we try not to react to that. We will distract him, maybe take him into another activity. He loves music, he loves certain things. We distract it. But more important, we try to avoid it by, for example, in the first 8-9 months, I don't want him to be at home all the time. So even when it's considered, some people may consider as duplicate activities. When you already have some therapy, you still go for something else. The whole thing is to get him out of the house, not to feel lonely, not to look at the four walls blankly, even listening to music, but still at that stage of recovery, you have to be very mindful of that. And later on, now it's easier to manage. And the COVID, we have all the, well, we give him all the exposure now. In fact, now he understands what is Zooming. Maybe he doesn't know how to do the link, but he knows what is to appear on video.
Okay.
So these are the things then that we go through, and if anybody is too tired, take a break. I mean, we just ask someone else to do it.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Yes. Yeah,
I wanted to just quickly add like the downside, right? Learn to laugh at yourself and at the situation. So there was once, right? My father, who is paralyzed fully on the right side, opened the gate and ran away. And then he went to the park. Okay, like can you imagine my father with like his
Wow.
and he ran away to the park and he just circled. Apparently he was very angry because something triggered him in the house. And so right, my mother had to call me from work. I had to dash home. That time I was working like within walking distance from home. Dash home and I had to chase him around the park. I was very, very angry, you know. I
That's
was
quite hilarious,
I
but
was,
yeah,
no, I mean,
now
when it was
thinking back,
happening, it wasn't funny,
it
right?
wasn't. It wasn't. It was
Imagine, like,
scary.
freezing. But then when I come back, when I managed to get him home, right, I laugh lah, because he is kind of funny, right? I mean, imagine, I mean, the vision of
Oh
from
my God.
my blog, right, must have been hilarious, right? This girl like chasing her father with a walking stick. My father was faster than me, okay. So you
Wow, your
need to
father
be,
is really strong-willed.
yeah. I mean, he's still
Yeah.
strong-willed, but then the physical strength is unfortunately not there anymore. But the will is still there. So
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
learn to laugh at yourself and at the situation. Some of my friends say I'm really very morbid. I can laugh at the weirdest things. But then I think like after 10 years, if I don't laugh, I will have suffer like mental health consequences. So better to laugh it off.
Yeah, like what
Yeah.
Catherine said also, right? Take a break and accept invitation to go out as well. Laugh at things that happen. Yeah. So we have another question for our Facebook audience. How has living with aphasia changed family life? So any one of you would like to share? How has living with aphasia changed family life? Catherine, Douglas, Hazirah, anyone?
For me, it's like all of us have to learn how to communicate with our father, and we've become very good guessers. Like he sometimes will point to things or he'll make gesture, right? And if you are slow, he'll get very angry with you because you know it's very tiring for him also, right? I mean, imagine you are playing Pictionary, but for my father, Pictionary is permanent. Right, for us, you imagine like playing Pictionary, then you guess like cookie, burger, then you're like, yeah, why this person cannot get? But for my father, it's like a permanent reality, right? So for us, it's about trying to learn how to guess faster about what he wants. Yeah.
For me, it's to enable him to, whenever I ask him a question or whenever he says something, it's always in phrases or in words. So now my task is to help him to form sentences. Sometimes his memory is also affected, and he's not able to articulate his thoughts, into speech. So I'm trying to sort of, speak to him more, and sometimes he'll be watching TV and we'll discuss the program which was on TV, and try to there'll be a conversation between and sort of try to make him speak in sentences. That's my aim, to help him to be able to vocalize everything, not in words and phrases but in sentences. It affects us now, but slowly, I will remind him, and whenever he sort of, is just his replies are just one word, I will remind him to sort of, can you rephrase, can you speak, form a sentence out of, the phrase or a word, and he'll try, he tries.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. Like, you're motivating him and he continued to try and try on, yeah?
Yeah,
So
sometimes it doesn't succeed, but
yeah, I'm
it's
sure.
always an ongoing, exercise lah.
Yeah, there are good days and there are not so good days, but we just keep going on and be consistent with it, yeah?
That I can't make him do is to go for outings. I always want him, and that was one instance when I celebrated my birthday. He agreed to go for the dinner, and normally it's quite hard to get him to go, and it's past his bedtime, so he normally sleeps very early, and he had to, he tires very easily after exercise and all that. And then I think that's part of the symptoms of a stroke. I think, when he does his exercises, he gets tired very easily.
I see. Okay. So Douglas, you have anything to share with us with regards to this aspect?
I think we, as a family, we're adjusting to him now in terms of his he has to depend on us. But I think adjusting is only the initial start. I think it's more important to empower him now at the stage where he's improving, even if it's by way of gesture. If he doesn't want to do certain things which are not critical for his in terms of development, if it's in terms of preferences, let him be, empower him whether he wants to go out, but again, when it comes to therapy, it's important to find the therapists that are attending to him, whether it's physio, no, or speech or whatever, someone that he can connect. No, there is not, because over the years I noticed not all therapists, no, and the patient have this connectivity, you know what I mean? Some can connect better, some cannot. So it takes two hands to clap.
Yes.
So what we do is we identify, and then it's just like, you ladies, when you go to a hair salon, you normally want the same hairstylist, right? It's the same thing. Yeah. So we respect and we love. I think over time, it's be prepared for a very long journey, as I say, but that's actually, it's a very meaningful and fulfilling journey.
Right. It is a long journey. Yeah. So to our Facebook audience out there too, our show is about to come to an end. So do ask us more questions. Yeah, keep asking anything you have in mind, and we'll help you to connect the dots. And one more question from DC is like, how does a happy moment at home looks like now? Like, because we did share a little bit about the meltdowns and how we, the ups and downs in life. But how, I guess you want to know, how would you describe a happy moment at home now?
Sometimes I do sometimes crack jokes lah, and he will be smiling and he will laugh. Sometimes I find certain things I comments I made, when it's watching the TV and all that. So my son will start laughing, and but when he laughs too much, he gets choked. And so, but it's good to see him, laughing, very glad, that is good. But even though, he'll be coughing after that, choking, and then we had to, tell him, go slow, don't laugh so much, don't laugh so much. So that, that's when I know that he's enjoying the show, or enjoying, certain things I do that he finds funny, he will start laughing,
Yeah. For me, it's when I manage to balance everyone's quality of life. So one thing that happens when you have a family member who is severely disabled, right, which is what has happened to my family, is that all the attention gets directed to my father, which is great, which is important, but I feel that, and it's been told to me, and I encourage my family members to tell me when they feel that I've directed too much energy in one direction and I've neglected their needs. So I'm a co-caregiver, but the primary caregiver is still my mother. So for me, right, happiness comes when I manage to balance everyone's quality of life. So for example, we just moved house, and it was I don't want to repeat that process again, ever again. But when I think about all the pain and suffering and trying to do transaction in my father's name, right, I know what's the main purpose. I'm trying to boost one person's quality of life, which is moving my mom closer to her sisters. So when everything comes together, right, that means I get to move my father to a house in which we can modify the house to better meet his needs. I move my mom closer to a social support network, and then the home is more easily situated in terms of like nearer to the poly, nearer to like services that we might need, nearer to the hospital that my father is at. So when I manage to hit the balance, right, which doesn't happen all the time, the scales are always like that. When I manage to hit it, I feel like, yes, finally, I managed to do something that fulfills everybody's needs. Yeah.
How about Douglas?
I think knowing Matthew well, the family, we know what are his interests. So a happy moment would be like, for example, he likes family members to be around. So for example, my grandchildren, if they come over, or the nephew, nieces, besides the immediate family, he's very happy. You can see him glowing from all over. Because they bring a lot of joy for him also. So they play with him, you know, they behave like no. So he's not so threatened, you know, talking to an adult, no, intellectual adults, but talking to children, no, 5, 6 years old, 3, 4 years old, oh, it's really a joy. So interest, music, no, he's particularly fond of music, although he cannot really sing, in terms of no words. But I remember one time he was hospitalized about a year, slightly more than a year and a half, when he was almost, no, that was really at almost the end of life. But no, we play from YouTube music and we sing, and you can see he's all alert and singing. No, not only his hands are moving, his face, his mouth, babbling, murmuring. So I think these are the things that are important. The other thing that we did from day one was to keep his environment unchanged.
Right.
In other words,
right.
you don't want to change anything except for safe proving the place, like now grab bars, anti-skids, devices, equipment. But in fact, before he got stroke, he was supposed to move. He got a new flat. He said no. His current flat is large enough. There are 3 bedrooms. He's alone, single. So we say no. You know, we talk to him. He agrees. I mean, by nodding his head, because I think it's important to keep everything stable, relationships, environment. Because he introduced new elements into his life, he's going to be very confused.
That's a very good point. Yeah, to keep things consistent and environment safe for him that's familiar with. So that we have actually a good question from Jimmy. So what advice do you have for new caregivers? Maybe Catherine, Douglas, and Hazirah can give one line advice for new caregivers, like what specifically they can take note of. I think Douglas actually did a very good summary, give a good environment, right, Douglas? Yeah. And, to try not to introduce too many new things at one go. Yeah. So anyone?
Yeah, remember you have a new identity. Yes, I am Hazirah, the caregiver, but I am still Hazirah. Right, I'm still Hazirah, a person with her own interests, her own things that she does outside of her normal everyday life. So do try not to let the caregiver identity overwhelm you, but make it part of you. So it just becomes one more aspect of yourself. It's hard, but after 10 years, I've had to learn.
Right. What about Catherine? What would you like? Some new advice to new caregivers out there?
You have to be patient and take one thing at a time, one step at a time, and not expect too much to sort of change. Of course, the journey itself will be difficult for him as well as for you, but as long as you know that you are there for him, and he knows that you are there for him, it will be easier for both to cope lah. To cope.
Yeah. What about Douglas? One line advice.
Regularly evaluate his functional abilities, review goals and set new goals, because that will keep you going. Because if you forget about such things, then it's like you don't know in which direction you are going. There's no timeline, and anyway, all these are not set in stone, but it's good to have all these markers so that now you know where you are at any point in time in your caregiving journey.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. All 3 of you gave very good sharing and a lot of milestones that can help new caregivers in their journey. So caregivers are superheroes in comfortable clothes. I really like this quote, because look at you guys, you're just No, without kids, just in comfortable clothes. Yeah. So Grace, I received your question. Caregiving is a full-time job. Do you take that hat off, like to give yourself a break and be your own person, like self-care? I think this has also been addressed in the earlier part of the session. So do all audience here, if you miss out some questions, you can actually play back and watch the show again later on when this live has been completed. Yeah.
I just add
So,
one line,
yes,
one word.
Hazirah, sure.
Give yourself permission to do the things you want to do. Like Catherine said, I don't know whether I can go with my friend. Give yourself permission. I mean, like verbalize it. Like, I deserve to. So I traveled for 2 months because I really needed it, and I told myself I deserve to. That's it. I give myself
Right.
permission.
Yeah. Give yourself permission to also love yourself and be yourself, right? Yeah, so thank you very much to our superhero caregivers today. Yeah, we have Hazirah. Once again, Hazirah, Douglas, and Catherine, thank you so much for joining us in this show. So to wrap things up, yeah, at the end, next week, what we're gonna have is we're gonna have another session. It's our 7th session. Yeah, and it is episode 7. It will be about aphasia journey. So to all our Facebook audience out there, do remember to catch this episode on sharing of 3 guys here, their aphasia journey. So yeah, so that's all for today. Really thank you very much, Hazirah, Douglas, and Catherine, for agreeing to be part of this show. Yeah, and I hope all our Facebook audience have learned a lot, and do remember to rewatch it once this is over from our Aphasia SG Facebook page. All right. Thank you, everyone, and good night. Bye.